Hey PowerAppers, user-defined functions are here and we're gonna talk about them because a viewer of mine, and I get to that in a second, had a really good idea how to use them. So let me quickly show you what you can basically do with them. Before user-defined functions, we had to write this kind of code every time we wanted to include an SVG icon into our PowerApps, and I do write that code really frequently, and I hate it. So now we have a better way to do this, and in just one really small line of code, we can achieve exactly the same thing. But let's take a quick step back. So props to my viewer, props to KlausDev85. And under my last video where I showed you how you can color those SVG icons, he had the great idea to combine this with the new user-defined functions. So KlausDev, really nice idea, and I took it a little bit further and tried to really shorten my code as you just saw there. But before we jump into that, let's just really quickly let me describe you what are user-defined functions, what can you do with those user-defined functions, and what can't you do with those user-defined functions. So let's jump into a new Canvas app and get this thing started. But I don't just take any new app. No, we're gonna start with the template that I start every new Canvas app from. It's the Material Design Components Library Plus template that Louise Frese and me created together and put out there for everyone to download. It's absolutely free to use. I'm going to put the link in the description down below and show you how to get that thing going. So I'm going to link you this GitHub repo you see in the screen right now. And there's lots of documentation how to use everything, and also the template file and the new experimental template file. We get to that later. So here's the MD template version 1.1 right now, .msapp, and we're gonna click on there and download the file, and then we can use it in PowerApps. So let's jump back to PowerApps. If we want to use the template here, we click create new app and then select anything but blank app. So we're gonna hit a Dataverse. We don't want to start it from a Dataverse table because actually you can use it with every data source of your choice. We're gonna click open right here. We're gonna click browse, and then we use this template here that we just downloaded. Not for the first time for me, obviously. So now we are here with our template. And if we want to use the new user-defined functions, first we have to flip some switches. And words of warning before, this is still an experimental function, so play around with it now, but probably don't use it in your production apps until it's at least preview, or better, of course, general available. So we're gonna hit settings, and then for the upcoming features, first we have to look for experimental, and then we have to switch on the new analysis engine first. And also, second switch the user-defined functions under experimental. And then we need to actually save that app and reload it. So let's start our first user-defined function. And yeah, let's start really easy. Here, let's start with our hello world function. So instead of typing hello world here, we just want to type world and want to add that hello in automatically. We're gonna find our user-defined functions on the app object, and then just as the named formulas, they share the same property here, the formulas property. As a prefix, Rory Neary proposed that we use NF for named formulas because that's what it was originally called. So I'm gonna stick with NF for now. We're gonna call it hello world. Then we can define our input properties. So I'm going to call this hello text, and we can choose between these properties right here. and I'm gonna choose text because I want to put a string in there. And then we have to define the output property, which will also be text in our case right now. And for all the examples that will follow, we will use text a lot because we will use the SVG icons where we put text in all the time. I'm gonna use the a new notation, and we use hello and then our hello text in there, exclamation mark, and don't forget this in the end, otherwise it won't work. So now, instead of just typing hello world, we can use our new NF hello world, and then we can type in a world here. And isn't that fantastic? This is our first really easy and small user-defined function. So let's take a look what you can do and what you can't do. As input parameters, we can use all these different things. And let's take another quick look. So we can use the obvious ones like a bool or even a date, a number, decimal number, or text. We can also use things like color, and we will use this in our examples. But what we can't use is normal objects. We can use an untyped object, but then of course we have to use the parseJSON function. Let's talk about another serious limitation of stuff that we can't do right now. Actually do stuff. So if I want, for example, have a user-defined function that does stuff, probably we don't even want an input parameter in there and don't want an output, but we want to do stuff like set a variable. We get, yeah, there it is. Then we get that error message that you probably know. Behavior function in a non-behavior property, you can't use this property. Yeah, because this is a use case I have all the time in nearly every app as well, and I end up putting an icon in there that I hide away, and yeah, where I just use select icon to call my function from the icon. But it would be much nicer to have a fixed place where we can store these kind of behavior formulas where we do stuff, retrieve data, set variables, and so on. It's not in there in the first iteration. Let's hope we will get there at some point. Fingers crossed. So, but let's try some actual useful stuff. Now let's try some of our SVG code. So first of all, let's start a little bit easier. And we want to import one of the components of our component library. Please try that out as well. It's also in the documentation, also in the GitHub repo. Download it, install it, and then you can get a component. And one of my absolute favorites is the button. I use this in nearly every app because it's much more flexible than a normal button. We have the icon in here, we have a little shadow, and with one button we can flip this around to a outline button. But how does the SVG object get in here? We can just use SVG code as I showed you in the last video. And also in this template, there are 5,000 SVG icons hidden in this material design icons data source in here. And what I end up doing most of the time is I'm going to type something like this. We're going to query our material design icon table that is in there. And then we have to write something like this, and then SVG path to get everything out. And then we actually get the dev star here in our button. But let's find an easier function to replace this lookup, so we can just type dev star variant and get our icon out. And this is actually really easy. So let's jump back to the functions and let's say NF icon, and we want to input the icon name, which is also text, and we get back text as well. Don't forget this in the end. And then we should use this function, nf icon dev star, and I think I made a small mistake. Yeah, because I forgot to put our parameter to use. So of course we don't want to get always the same thing out of here, but we can get the dev star now out of here, or the account. And I also had an idea to make it a little bit more comfortable, because I don't know all of these 5,000 strings. Last video I showed you the account symbol with the cowboy hat, so it's like something like account cowboy, a little bit different. So let's try to retrieve the icon, even if I don't spell anything correctly. But yeah, let's use the search function to make this a little bit better. But if I knew the exact name, then I want to use the lookup first. So one function you don't need all the time, but you should really know how to use it. So because you can write really clean code with it from time to time, is the coalesce function. And then we want to search for, in our material design icons library, for the icon name in our name column. And then we want the first hit, and we want to get the SVG path out of it. Yes, and you saw that it worked. Now we get our little cowboy out of it. So let's kick it up a notch, and let's use the thing that I showed you last video. So we're gonna include the substitute function here as well. And I did that on an image control. And there we had our SVG wrapper code around it. And yeah, here this also works. And now we can also use our nf icon cowboy. And now this seems to work, but now we want the colored icon, what I showed you last video. So let's include that colored icon as well. So let's say nf colored icon. And now we want to have the icon name as a text. And then we want to bring in the hex color as a text as well. And we're going to change it up in a second and use this as a color property. So, but first of all, let's put the hex color in there, because we have it in our template as well. We can also nest these functions. So I'm going to show you what I mean. This is from last video. If you haven't seen it, I explain it here. I'm going to link it on the top so you can watch it afterwards. So we're going to substitute. Let's try to nest these user-defined function. So we're going to use our nf icon function we defined in here, again with the icon name. And there we're going to place SVG at the beginning here with SVG fill equals and then we use the hex color in here. Hex color that we defined in here as an input parameter. And we need to close this, and Now this should work if we use the NF colored icon, and then we have to provide one more parameter, and this is defaults dot primary color text. There we have our purple in there. Small mistake somewhere, so colored icon. We didn't define the output format, and as you saw in the background, now this works, and now we just have to provide the cowboy and the color in here, and also much faster. But next step, if we use this on an image control, why do we have to use this filler code in here? Because on the buttons in the whole component library, you just have to provide the SVG code, and we already provided that wrapper code inside of the component. But probably you want to use this in a gallery. You can't use components in there, so you have to use the code in there. So let's kick it up a notch, and we use the NF colored wrapped icon. So let's try the next thing. We use the icon name. We use the hex color again, both as text, of course. And then again, we can use nested functions, also define the output. And then we just use the NF colored icon with the icon name and the hex color. And let's quickly copy the code from here. So we're going to use the data image SVG plus XML and so on. And also use that here, and then close this. And now we should be able to delete all of this and have the colored wrapped icon. I had another idea for something that was missing in PowerApps so far, to create transparent colors from normal PowerApps colors. And I've created this in our new experimental version of the template. You can also download from the GitHub repo, as I showed you in the beginning. Let me quickly show you what I mean by that. So if we have a rectangle with a fill property, then we could use the color fade, and then we use our primary color, and then we can fade that by a certain amount, let's say 80%. But the problem here is this is not transparent. On a button that I hover, I want everything behind that button to be visible. I use that when I want to hover over a whole row in a gallery, for example, and I place the button in here, so you get the mouse pointer and know that you can click on it and get the hover effect. But then I don't want the color fade property, but I want something like the NF color transparent. Yes, that's what I call it, and it works just like the color fade, but now, yeah, we have transparent color. So that's a little bit more complicated, but you can see here how I did that, or you just download the experimental template and take a look there. So really exciting stuff. As I said, just experimental for now, but play around a little bit with it, get your feet wet. I will definitely start using that, so we don't have to repeat a less and less code when writing PowerFX. So if you have other great ideas like my genius viewer, please let me know in the comments, and I love to learn from you as well. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and See you next time.